In the process of moving to our new house, our Barnwood headboard was broken. The lights were damaged, some of the Barnwood slats were broken, and then the support pieces were also broke. This was the very first project that we made whenever we got our old house, so I can't say it was super durable or sturdy, but we really did like the design and it was going to incorporate really well with our new master bedroom. Our new master bedroom has exposed beams on the ceiling, terracotta tile flooring, and we're trying, as in it's still a work in progress, go for a southwest sort of look for the room. So a Barnwood headboard would definitely help tie it all together. So we decided to make a new and improved version of our old headboard. So after doing a bunch of Instagram research, we came up with this design for our headboard. This is about 4 feet tall and 74 inches wide, which is just about 2 inches wider than our bed. The whole backing of all these slats is going to be a piece of 1/4-inch plywood, and then this border is going to be made out of a true 2x4 from a 1900 barn we tore down. So we went ahead and calculated what all the length should be. We went ahead and made a parts list of how many of each length we need. So we're going to go look through our stash and find the right amount of boards and collect them all and bring them over to the table saw. See you in the shop. So before we started cutting on all the barnwood, we started with a piece of plywood and cut it down to size for the backer board so that we could use it as a blank canvas to get all the lengths of the barnwood right. We started off by cutting all the barnwood pieces about 4 to 5 inches longer than they needed to be. Then we ripped them all down to 5 inches wide. Then we lightly sanded the faces of all the boards with 220 grit sandpaper to get rid of anything that could give someone a splinter. Then we cleaned them using a nylon brush and some mineral spirits. Now that the boards were all prepped, it was time to start assembling the headboard. So we didn't really just run and gun putting down these boards. We actually had a little bit of thought about the order in which we would place the boards in order to minimize the amount of stack up error or misalignment error. We placed all our boards as matching mirrored pairs rather than just going up one side and down the other. The boards we chose to start with were these two. They were the longest boards and both ends only needed to be cut at 45-degree angles, so this would make a good foundation to align everything else to. The next boards we chose to do were these two. That was because they were equally as long as the previous two boards, and they were the only other boards that would go from the side all the way to the middle. Every other board would go from either the side to the top or the middle to the bottom. This made it pretty easy to align all the other boards to these two sets of boards and be able to complete the whole pattern. From here we chose to work in the top two corners since those boards didn't have to meet up with any other board at the edge, and then we finished with the bottom boards since they all had to meet in the middle. So for what it's worth, all the wood we're using is true barnwood. It all came off a 1900 carriage barn in Liberty, South Carolina. All the lumber was milled by the owner himself from the property that the barn was made on. So none of these boards are really what I would call uniform. They're all varying thicknesses, some are much thicker than others, and we had to plane them down in order to have them come closer to the average board from this lot, and then other boards we actually had to shim up in order to get them to see more flush with the rest of the headboard. I should also probably mention the way we attach these boards is by using wood glue, then screwing from the back side into the boards, being careful to not use too long of a screw that would stick out the front side. We installed the frame of the headboard with wood glue and simple pocket hole joinery. After that, the only thing left to do was install the mounting hardware and touch sensitive lights. So this thing's very heavy. It's definitely over 50 pounds. I think it's closer to 70 or 80 pounds. Don't know exactly, but we're gonna need something pretty robust to be able to hang it on the wall. So what I'm going to do is use this scrap piece of 2x4 that's already been ripped down to 3 inches from the table saw project, and we're going to make a French cleat out of it. So one half of the French cleat will be right about here at the very top edge of the headboard, and then the other half will be mounted to the wall, and that should be more than enough to hang it. We'll make sure to get right in the center of the studs on the wall, and I think it'll be plenty good. To make the French cleat, I used a 2x4 that was cut in half. I used the table saw to do this because my bandsaw is currently out of commission. A bandsaw would have been a much better option because, as you notice, I keep having to go to reset the breaker. Obviously, cutting a 2x4 in half is putting a lot of load on that table saw, so having it just on a 15 amp circuit is actually tripping the breaker a whole bunch. So the headboard that I made for our old house, we actually got kind of spoiled because I actually put some lights on it that were touch sensitive. So we're actually going to do that again for this headboard. So these lanterns from Hobby Lobby come with a hollow top, and so what I did is I took a hole saw and I cut out a hole from a piece of wood that I then mounted a light bulb fixture to. Ran the wires through the center hole from the hole saw, and now I can insert that in, and I will actually take a screw and screw it in through the side to actually hold that in place. So now that that's fixed in place, let me talk a little bit about the wiring and what I did here. This is 3 separate wires that I just braided into a braid so it's a little bit more concealed. On the inside, 2 of the wires, hot and neutral, actually wired to the fixture itself. The 3rd wire is actually loose on the inside here, and I will actually anchor that to one of these screws that hold the lid on. The lid is connected to the whole cage, and so this one is actually for the basically the resistance. Whenever you touch the wire itself, it'll actually trigger the switch to turn on the light or change the dim setting. So once we anchor that to this metal, this whole metal cage will be activated to where you can turn it into a switch. The key for making this work is this Westech Touchtronic 3-level dimmer controller. I purchased this one at Home Depot for about 10 bucks. You can also get them online. This is basically just a light switch, except it makes it to where the light switch can be controlled by touch. So I will link this in the description below if anybody's interested in finding one of these. So for the actual wiring, I went ahead and flagged the loose wire that's actually attached to the frame of the lantern with this yellow, and it's actually going to connect to this Touchtronic with the yellow wire. And then for the remaining 2 wires, since this is just an incandescent light, it doesn't really matter which one you use, but one needs to go to the brown wire of the touch dimmer. The last one is actually going to mate with the wire for your power cord, and then the neutral wire, the gray wire from your touch dimmer. And then the last one is the black wire, that's your hot, and that's going to go on the other wire of your power cord. There we go. I made the French cleat long enough to go across 4 studs, so we found the center of all the studs behind our bed, and we used 3.5-inch lag screws to drill through the French cleat into each of the studs, and that's what was going to hang the headboard behind the bed.